Just reading your piece, Prof, on the back, obviously, of a poll this past weekend that everybody has been talking about, one doesn't get like a great deal of hope, about what may happen, after next week's poll.
Well, I think I'd say the opposite. This is being the freest and fairest election for a long time. Obviously with qualifications.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying, because when you raise the prospects of, or the possibility of certain people backed by the army who may refuse to accept an outcome that may not be to their liking,
I think
that doesn't augur well.
That's also always a possibility, but I think if we look at the positive side instead of the negative side, there's lots of pressure out there to make sure it stays free and fair, to make sure that there is no military intervention if there's a runoff instead of a clear majority. You know that in the presidential race, you vote directly for a president. If no candidate gets over 50% plus one, then there's a runoff. And you remember in 2008 when you were there, I think, we were there, that led to around 200 people being killed and many. But that didn't happen in 2013. The rigging and the cheating was much more subtle. There was intimidation, but there wasn't that much violence. And I think now we do have a relatively freer field. Sure, we have those tensions, those possibilities, but I think everybody's aware of them. There are more observers than there were before. You hear reports of some militia and some soldiers ununiformed in the villages, but not too many. We have the ballot papers, which the MDC Alliance is complaining about, and you have two columns. So on the top right column, you have Mnangagwa, whereas if you had a straight list of 23 candidates, Mnangagwa wouldn't be at the top right. Things like that. The voters' roll, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission is probably more incompetent than really cheating a lot. So I think, yeah, there is that negative side that we have, and perhaps it was overemphasized in that piece. But the awareness and the memory of what's happened in the past is much sharper. And of course, we have Emmerson Mnangagwa leading a regime which has committed itself to free and fair. And if its legitimacy locally as well as internationally really hangs on this. And also the international actors who have basically, look, SADC didn't go in. Oh, no, it wasn't a coup. The Roman Catholic Church says, no, it was an unexpected but peaceful transition. All of those forces have to have this go right. Otherwise, they all lose.
Yes, but also there has to be an acceptance. I mean, the fact that there is a much better atmosphere now than there has ever been in recent times in Zimbabwe comes with a greater support and legitimacy for the ruling party, that it's beginning to do things right. It's the same thing. You can talk about that here, that once you've removed Jacob Zuma as the gift that kept on giving to the opposition, once that began to change, it meant that Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC then got back a lot of people who may have lost faith in them, isn't it?
Yes. For example, I think it was yesterday, the day before yesterday, Mnangagwa met with whites in Borodale, and they all seemed to be very happy to be talking to him.
Exactly.
And within both parties, much like here, the ruling party still has the losers to contend with, right? So there's lots of the G40 people there, actually who won primary nominations for a lot of constituencies. And you have the new, or the National Patriotic Front, whatever it is, that Jonathan Moyo is leading with his Twitters. And it's obvious that the MDC Alliance is a loose and fractious and sometimes angry
group. Has been for a while.
Yeah, I mean, Morgan Tsvangirai, you create 3 vice presidents, and, Nelson Chamisa kind of railroaded his way to be president right after Morgan Tsvangirai died. So both parties are not united. So I think...
Now, which then brings me to another possibility you're raising, that of big trade-offs that will have to be negotiated and striking deals, that striking deals may be at the center of whether or not one talks about whether the election will be a success. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong there, isn't it? Or bad, because, I mean, democracies the world over. Look at what has been happening in the UK. You look at what is happening in Germany, you know, as we speak. So it's part of the political system.
Yeah, I think if it was a very close election, if there seemed to be worries that the runoff was going to lead to violence, if there was going to be a runoff, 47, 43 or something like that, the possibilities of a GNU, Government of National Unity, would not be impossible, and that might keep the senior soldiers happy. Because again, the biggest...
In fact, for a while, if you go back, that Government of National Unity did bring some goods to Zimbabwe.
Yes, and the big thing, though, that saved that was the move to the American dollar. And what is the biggest thing, no matter who wins, if it's a GNU, if it's Chamisa with 80% of the vote, if it's a parliament with a majority that would go the MDC, that's another thing to watch, is the parliament, whether it's a hung parliament or not. The economy. The economy is a disaster. You know, these treasury bills that the state forces banks to buy, the money, which is just this electronic currency floating around, and if it's ever cashed in, it collapses. The government asking the Chinese for a $2 billion bailout, queuing for hours, and by shift, it's already changed to another currency in a sense, right? So they've done what they could do in 2009. So this is going to be a very, very important post-election phase, whether we're talking about pacts and coalitions or not. The economy is going to really bite this time. There's no way out unless they find $30 billion worth of more diamonds in some field.